Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to TechC Podcast, Founders Special Sauce, episode 3 already. I'm Keiran. I'm back with Ken, and today we are joined by Dario Fusato, who is CEO of Savvly. And Savvly is a modern pension plan solution, which we are extremely interested to hear more about. So thank you very much for joining us, Dario.
Thank you.
But first of all, can you just give us a little lowdown on what Savvly exactly is?
So Savvly is a personal pension for lifetime financial security. If you think about social security that many governments around the world provide to retirees, and when you stop working and you retire, that type of payments is driven by governments and their budgets and how much money they have and how long they think you're going to live and so on. Now, you can build that same system in a way that is market-driven and always solvent, and make it portable for individuals. You can help them fund it. You can have their employers fund it. And you can live the rest of your life knowing that you will be able to receive a paycheck as long as you live. Too much silence. I must have said something wrong. If you're a little bit puzzled, there's a reason, and it's a financial product that doesn't exist today. Depending on where you live in the world, you have governments that either they protect you when you retire, or they partially protect you when you retire, which is actually what's happening in Europe now, and that governments are not really giving a lot of money, or like Social Security in the US only partially protects you, or governments that don't even do anything, right? And so what we want to do is kind of a private option where people with a very cognitive load, they just put money in and they know they will receive a paycheck until they die.
You can probably tell I'm from the UK. So I'm thinking about it from a UK perspective. I'm not that familiar with how pensions work in the US personally, and I'm sure there'll be other people who maybe are not that familiar with it. In the UK, we do have Social Security, as you probably call it, but also if you're employed, the employer has to pay into a pension for you. That's been happening for a few years now. So I'm assuming it's obviously different in the US.
Yes. Actually, so my accent is clearly Italian, but I live in the US. And when I grew up in Italy, the pension system was quite different from the US. And so, for instance, I had my parents who retired a few decades ago. And when they retired, they received a check that was about 90% of their last paychecks. Well, the system clearly didn't work, right? But the biggest countries of Europe, like you think about Germany, France, Italy, Spain, the UK. The UK was actually a little bit different, but you didn't have to plan for retirement because you know that you're going to get a paycheck, more or less equivalent to your past ones. Not only that, but you lived I grew up in a system where healthcare was basically free. So you would actually celebrate when you retire because you say, I'm done. I can go on vacation. I just don't work. And anything I need to do, I can do it in my current financial scenario and income. When I came to the US, I was a little bit shocked because I moved I grew up in a country where there is no financial planning for retirement because you're fine, right? Somebody will take care of you. Through your government pension, Social Security, which is very close to your last paycheck. And Keiran, like you said, maybe some employers would actually add to it. And I came to the US and basically said, well, I don't know how to plan. And I realized that in reality, you need to plan for retirement because the government Social Security is way too low. And so you need to start saving money. And the questions for the most risk-averse people in your audience is how much you need to save so that you don't run out, and how much you can spend so that you don't leave way too much on the table. So that was actually the beginning of the company, right? Is a very incompetent planner, okay, in Europe comes to the US and say, oh my gosh, now I need to be a really good planner and I don't know how to do it. And so that was the beginning of Savvly.
Quick break. Imagine outsourcing without the headaches. With TaskBeast, you get your own chief outsourcing officer who finds top freelancers, manages them, and guarantees quality work, saving you time and stress. TaskBeast is outsourcing made seamless. Visit taskbeast.com to get started. Now, back to the show.
One question. So I grew up in America, and so I grew up. I graduated college around '99, and even when I was growing up, early in my career, it was rare that companies gave you a pension. So Americans, I think, have really been brought up with this concept of, okay, you got to save, you have 401ks, and you contribute towards. So in that environment, like I think a lot of Americans would be a little bit confused. Like, what is this pension thing? Because it was never really available to my generation.
Yeah, it's a very good question. So, a pension in corporate America, which by the way they don't exist any longer, right? They run off for the old ones. They don't exist because of mainly two reasons. Okay, this is my interpretation of the word, the U.S. word, for those who listen. So I'm not an expert in U.S. history, but what really happened was that governments, in order to retain, employers, in order to retain employees, would actually provide additional benefits on top of Social Security, right? So they would tell you, well, if you stay 10, 20, 30 years and you work for us, we're going to give you a paycheck on top of Social Security until you die. The paycheck was until you die, and many of those paychecks would actually add an additional amount of money to cover healthcare costs. What really happened is that people started living longer, and healthcare costs in the US skyrocketed. So what those great employers found out is that what they planned to give was not enough money. And so they started cutting those benefits, and they said, well, we have a great idea. Instead of giving you a pension, we give you access to a saving accounts called 401ks, right? You save as much as you can. You spend as little as possible when you retire, and you cross your fingers. Maybe you don't run out. That was the model, Ken, right? You know this model better than I do. Now, when you come from a system where you're fine and you have no planning, you need to start to decide, okay, how much do I put on my 401k? Is that enough? In my case, I thought, was this clearly not enough, right? If you go to a restaurant today in the US, it's like, okay, how much will I be able to go when I retire? And so the question was, is there a better way than the two opposite alternatives? One alternative is that the employer gives me a huge amount of money because they don't know how long I'm going to live, and reserves a huge amount of money. Or I do everything on my own, but I don't know. I may save way more than necessary if I die next year, or I haven't saved enough if I live a very long life, I go to a nursing home, I have a huge healthcare cost. And the best solution that we came out was, okay, why don't we build a model portfolio where you save your own money, it's all yours, but there is a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of this portfolio, your investment portfolio, let's say 2, 3, 5%, 10% maximum, that behaves like a pension. And by a pension means that it's going to pay you as long as you live. It's going to pay you a huge amount of money as long as you live. And so what we say is that this small component of your portfolio replenishes your accounts as you live longer life, so that you never run out. And we help clients telling them, okay, once you save this amount of money, once you have this portfolio with bonds and equity and this specific fund that gives you this kicker, takes care of your second half of retirement, we can even tell you how much you can withdraw from your own accounts that behaves like a pension. And by the way, if you live a very long life, it keeps paying you, because this specific fund that we call it a Savvly fund keeps paying you as long as you live. And how does it do it? Is very simple. We use early withdrawal charges to increase returns from everybody. So let's say that the three of us join this fund. Each one of us put $10 in. The fund invests in a low cost market index funds. In the US, we use the S&P 500. In Thailand, you can use another one. In Germany, you can use the fifth, whatever. And over time, this fund grows and goes up and down. But if I die very young or I take the money out very early, okay, I'll leave a tiny fraction of my assets into the fund that is used to increase the return of you, Ken and Keiran. And that keeps me invested until you die. And you get access to it at specific ages when you reach them. Otherwise, you get the money back.
So one last follow-up question. So if I'm kind of a young American thinking about my retirement, and I think Americans are barraged by, hey, just open an account on Robinhood or whatever, invest in an ETF that invests in the S&P, and like historically, it's 9 or 10% annual returns for the last 30 years. So just keep putting into that and you'll be fine. So how do you, like, a person that's got that ingrained in their head, how do you position your ICP? What's your advantage?
Very good question, Ken. I would say this person should keep doing what she is doing, meaning that she's methodic enough to invest a reasonable amount of money in a low-cost index fund that represents the market, like the S&P 500. Should doing it because it's very efficient, and over a long period of time, it always wins. At least historically, always wins. The question that she needs to ask herself, though, is that enough, and how much she can withdraw out of that pot of money when she retires? And that's where we come in and we say, you know what, we're doing the same thing, like investing in low-cost index funds. However, a fractional value associated to your investment is shared across a lot of people like you. And we share the fractional portion of your investment with everybody else through a fund that returns more money to those who live longer lives. So you can take more out of your investments than you put in, including the investment gains, if you live way longer than average.
Gotcha.
And go ahead.
So it sounds like the people that die early sort of subsidize the people that live longer.
Correct. But they don't do it for the entire portfolio. They do it for a tiny fraction of the portfolio.
Gotcha.
And even if they die, they get basically the investment back and not the investment gains. So those your friend, okay, that is investing on an S&P 500 index funds, well, if I could talk with her, I would say, hey, listen, why don't you take 2-3% of what we invest and you put in this Savvly fund? You know what's happening? So if you die very young, you just get the money back. If you live a long life, okay, you get an investment gains that is 3, 4, 5 times, can be 3, 4, 5 times superior than the S&P 500 on your own. That replenishes your accounts and you get more money out of it. Make sense?
Gotcha.
It's almost like retirement insurance, right? It's almost retirement insurance. We cannot call it insurance because it's not legal insurance, okay? But that's a lot. And it's already available for accredited investors in the US. There is an app, obviously, is geographically restricted because of regulations, so I don't think it's available in Asia. But in the US, you can download the app. You can actually invest in the fund by itself as a private investment. And the retail version of the investment will be available in 2025. And well, not only, we actually have strong informal interest from players in Asia. It's very interesting because so I actually spent some time in Asia myself. I spent a few years, well, not a few months in Taiwan, in Taipei, and from there I went to Hong Kong and Shanghai and some other parts of Southeast Asia. But what's happening there that is not really happening much in the US is a lot of the financial systems in Asia is built over a phone. The phone has been one of the biggest, efficient vehicles, okay, to attract a bigger, a younger group of people into the financial services, whether it's banking, investment, insurance, and so on. And the idea that across the continent, you can build a private version of these retirement securities that everybody needs and you can start investing maybe $10 a month, whatever, $10 a month, just to give you a sense, or $50 a month, or even $1 million a month, depending on how much money you have. It's very valuable because it's very scalable. So there are a number of countries also, in not just in it, but in Latin America, right? Many of those, a lot of people don't trust the government as much as in other countries the government trusted. I don't know which countries now, but because the world is a mess. That would be the idea, right? Can you build a private version that works, is market-driven, is efficient, and mitigates inflation, and is scalable, and is safe? It's safe as the investment company, okay, that underlie the funds.
Now, I'm really interested to. I see you've been going for 3 years now. Is that right?
Yes, it's been a huge, long journey.
Yeah, and I went on your website, and I noticed that there's a wait list if you want to sign up for Savvly at the moment. So I'm really curious to, like, where are you at the moment, and how did we get here? What was the origin like 3 years ago?
So I have a scientific background. I study engineering and math in the US and in Europe. And then I'm one of those guys who ended up in a consulting company, this big like strategy consulting companies that are known, and there's a list of people who want to go there. And so I ended up there without kind of by total luck, even though I never wanted to be a consultant, and I remained as a consultant for like 6-7 years. And I worked across four continents over there, and it was a great experience. And one of the things that I did like 25 years ago as a consultant is that I really understood capital management and insurance underwriting. I had the privilege to be really going down like 10 feet down to understand exactly how things work. And that experience was very much relevant for me to ask these redundant questions in my life. And I think a lot of your people in the audience will relate with it. This is like, I'm afraid about the future because I don't know how much money I need to save. Will I go to a nursing home? I don't want somebody to take care of me, but maybe I don't even have the money to pay somebody to take care of me. I don't want to be a liability on my wife. All this, you have nightmares. Like, people get so into this type of things that they start becoming totally unrealistic. And I was one of those unrealistic person, right? I was thinking about the worst case scenario and try to mitigate what would I do in the worst case scenario. And so in my mind, I kept asking myself a question like, how do I achieve the highest level, the greatest level of financial security in my latest years for the smallest amount of money possible? Again, I repeat it because how do I achieve the highest level of financial security in my latest year with the smallest amount of money possible? And so the answer to that question came out as a result of the work that I did, let's say 25 years ago, that finally one day came out, okay, this is the approach. Nobody has done it. And so I was on my own. I kind of quit my job. I was on my semi-sabbatical year with my wife. My wife and I quit our jobs. So I said, okay, let's take 1 year off and decide what to do in lives in the US. And then I started to say, okay, why don't I spend time doing this? This excites me. I see there is a huge problem, not just in the US, in the world. I'm not the only one who's freaking out about the future. Let's do it. And I thought, if we wish naively, that would be an easy journey. We say, okay, once we figure out the math, and we talk to the right lawyers, and we hired the right IT people, and we raise a few $1 million, and we try to go to market. I just find things to check, and super easy to do.
That's a morning's work.
It didn't work that way. I'm the example. Well, at least for us. I mean, not everybody is Elon Musk and Bezos and Zuckerberg, and maybe we don't even know we only know the great success stories of these guys. We don't know, okay, what didn't work out. So we started I started this business with a friend of mine, initially bootstrapping. And we came out with some idea. Then what happened is we went to lawyers and said, okay, how can we build this, right? And lawyers, as soon as they hear that you have questions, they they love it because they know they can charge you hours and come out with as much as you can.
I bet they love you.
Yeah, there is no all you can eat. It's every hour you pay, and so they gave us some suggestions. There was a number of questions. What is this, right? Because we cannot fit in a bucket, right? And so how can we achieve what you want to achieve under a legal framework that's contemplated in the US, where there is, let's say, vertical A or B or C or D, right? And so when we started, we totally underestimated the level of complexity of what we were doing across all the possible levels, which is the technology side, which is the legal side, which is the compliance side, which is the go-to-market side, which is team building side. And then there was this pandemic that kind of ruined a few things. So, but long story short, we meet a very well-known investors, okay, at his house in the Bay Area, and I loved it. I mean, this guy says, well, basically, I don't understand very much what you guys are doing, okay, but my co-founder is the former COO of a large unit of a very large insurance company in the US and was the CEO of many micro regions in Europe for the same large insurance company. I built two very successful businesses. Well, I contributed in building two very successful businesses with my previous employees and said, so the team is there. I mean, you guys are not idiots. They said, the market is huge because retirement is about $40 trillion, trillion with the T in the US and twice as much in the world. And then, so the team is good. Well, in theory, on paper, I don't know if it's good, but on paper it's good. The market is huge. And the idea, actually, we need something like that. So there is a huge, need. So this guy on a PowerPoint, kudos to him, give us a check, a 7-digit check, right? In just, let's say, call it a week. And with that check, we started building the private version of the fund that is already available. You can invest it. We've been on. And after that, we started working on making the public version of the investment, meaning that everybody can invest, and ideally everybody can invest at any in any what do you call it distribution channel that is available in the US, and we want to expand it overall. I cannot share the details of where we are right now in terms of what are our next steps. There are a few things moving, but it's been an incredible journey. We love it. I never had so much fun in my life.
One quick question. One hurdle I'd imagine you have is if someone's investing for their pension and then they find out, okay, this is a startup. Like, what happens to my pension if you guys do go under? So what's the answer to that one?
So you get your investment backs. So as I mentioned to you, Ken, the what you call now the Savvly pension is a brokerage account in which you have funds from Vanguard, Fidelity, BlackRock, and other investment companies. Call it a balance account, almost like a targeted funds, meaning that you change the percentage of bonds and equity over time, right? Plus, there is a tiny fraction of our fund that is included. What is this tiny fraction? Well, I'll call it, let's say, 5%, just to simplify. Changes a little bit over time, right? So that fund is in a custodian account that is not Savvly. We are using a custodian account that very large financial institutions are using. The funds are all they are not into the Savvly fund, are not they are not Savvly, they are big investment companies. So even if Savvly goes out of business, right, those funds remain there in the custodian account. The trustees send money back to you, or you have accent in any case. For the Savvly fund, it's very interesting because the Savvly fund only buys ETFs from those investment companies. So even if the Savvly fund doesn't exist any longer, you have the assets from those investment companies. So you cannot say legally safe as an investment because market fluctuates but you don't have the credit risk associated to startups. We are
Okay.
basically think about Ken. You are the owner of a business, of a building. Okay, and you have a management company that manages the building, that rents the condos that are inside, right? The apartments. If the management company goes belly up, right, you don't lose the ownership of the building.
Right.
You just
Yeah.
don't have the advisor. Okay, that went belly up.
Okay. Gotcha. So, and all the good benefits that you mentioned, if you guys do go belly up, still happen, or does the product then simplify to some other
No,
role?
the price simplify because if, let's say,
Right.
if fund doesn't exist any longer, then you would just get the ETFs, whatever you got. It in addition, it's fine, it's yours, but then you're back on your own because Savvly doesn't exist any longer.
Gotcha.
We don't. Never say never, but you can consider it like your advisor, right? If your advisor goes out of business, you don't lose your assets because the account is
Right.
yours. You cannot even steal from your account, right? You can just play with it. So
Gotcha.
from that point of view, we are as safe as the big, important, well-known companies.
You said that you had the idea because it was a problem you were having yourself. But
Yeah.
how did you then? Did you test that idea with other people? Were you on the phone to people?
How you tested the market fit was actually a very interesting question. So I personally interviewed more than 150 advisors and asset managers at all level, from the chief investment officer, who is actually the only advisor you have, is the guy that basically is a portfolio based on some like category of clients within the advisory firms, to actually the lower tier person that is actually calling you as an advisor. And we did actually meet some of the most well-known and largest investment companies in the world, and they all know us. By the way, I came from a trip in Las Vegas. Everybody, I mean, all the big guys in the U.S. and some Europe, they know exactly what we're doing. And after I interviewed 150 of them, everybody was like, well, no, a couple of them said no, but we're talking about these are outliers. Everybody said, go for it. Let's do it. Make sure that as an advisor, everybody says, make sure that my advisory firms approves it, because I'm going to put it in everybody's account tomorrow for a number of reasons, not just the original reasons that we have, which is, okay, we want to make sure that we provide a safe retirement, peace of mind, right? So retirement in a box solution, right? My pensions coming in, right? No cognitive effort. For them, at the advisory side, was actually a great tool to retain their clients for the rest of their lives. I don't know what's happening in Southeast Asia, but in the US, there is something called the wealth transfer, where all the those baby boomers are about to die or they're getting older, and they transfer money to their children. So the baby boomers have money with their advisors, right? And once the money goes to the children, they take the money out and they go to a robot advisor or Robinhood or the other apps, or they go gambling. And the idea for a wealth manager to have a lifetime solution for clients that otherwise we give a lot of money to their children is a great option to retain clients after they retire. So that was number one. We didn't even know, but thanks to those interviews, I mean, I realized, oh, wow, we need it for A, but they really like B. B is a byproduct. Fine. That was number one. And number two, we did spend a significant amount of time with those guys that Ken mentioned earlier. So those 401k plans are basically defined contribution plans in the US, are very famous. Large corporations walked away from pensions and they said, no, you save on your plan, and your plan is called 401k, and then you take the money out when you retire. So I spend a lot of time with those guys because they know exactly, because of regulations, that they need to provide lifetime income in the future to their retirees, and there aren't a lot of options to provide lifetime incomes, and ours seems to be a very interesting value proposition for many of them.
What you said on the first part was very interesting to me. So basically, it sounds like one of your main distribution channels are these advisors who've been managing money for these boomers who are now passing away, and they need to. So you're kind of your distribution channel is almost a partner network that bring you customers, and the reason they're bringing you customers is because then they can continue to earn off their customers. Is that a
Well,
relatively?
so that was what we learned when we were working and designing the product and building the private fund, and then what we discovered, right, was that the private version of the product, right, wasn't an ideal fit for many of those advisors. They really like the mass market product, if you wish, that you can give to anybody, not just to the accredited investors, right? So, and we started working on the process, right? How do we make sure that this product is available on an app, right? It becomes available to everyone through the various channels, right? So what you need to do, and this Ken and Kevin, one of the biggest challenges we had is that we didn't know what we didn't know, and so we started with a white sheet of paper, and we didn't know, and so basically we realized, gosh, it's not that easy to even sell our product to people who want it, because you need to be integrated with their platform and client service model processes that they're used to, right? So you need to say, okay, once you build the fund, how do you give access to the fund? Okay, you need to build, for those who are experts, okay, transfer agents. You need to be in a big way. You need to make sure that you integrate with API. And you need to make sure you integrate with their planning platforms, and so on. So what we did, and we are doing now, we said, well, by the time we build the, let's say, the worldwide version, okay, of the product, let's move forward with the direct-to-consumer version for people who are not very old, they don't have an advisor, but relate with our mission, and they're willing to put a few $1,000s or a few $100s into this platform, which is actually what we're launching on January 1st. So the fund that I mentioned to you earlier, Ken, is a fund that is available, is for accredited investor, and we were selling only the smaller slide, okay, of the portfolio. And then we said, advisor, do the portfolio you want, right, with your clients, right? Do whatever you want. You just have this high return when you're late in life fund, right? That manages the tail risk of running out of money, right? And then do anything you want. Instead, what we decided to do for the direct-to-consumer version that is becoming available, okay, early next year is, great, we built everything for you. We are retirement in a box. Put $10 in. We allocate a portion in bonds, a portion in equity, and a portion in the Savvly fund. We tell you how much you're going to withdraw for the rest of your life once you retire based on your retirement age and the assumptions of the market. And in I think in Q2, we're going to have finalized the platform to be working and being connected with all the investment platforms in the US. Pending compliance with the providers, pending distribution agreement, pending everything else. And if everything goes as planned, we will be in a different continent at the end of the year.
Fantastic. Well, look, I mean, we're already over time. If there is anything that you would like to, any sort of message you would like to deliver to people as a parting gift?
The only recommendations I would recommend to anybody listening to you is that from what I understood in my personal experience, I was very much afraid of running out of money when, at least in terms of access to money, was higher than it is today. Because obviously today I put a lot of my wealth at risk. I'm taking more financial risk and business risk. And what I personally realized, is that a lot of the fears that we build in our brain are really driven by not the external environment and the situation in which you live, but more about your interpretation of what the situation really is, your person, and your vision of the future. So this financial insecurity that I had was driven by other problems. Okay, that wasn't really the amount of money that I had in my bank account. I wish I had today the amount of money I had when I was terrified. And if you still have a couple of minutes, I would like to share one thing that is super valuable and really changed my mind. So I'm privileged, meaning that I have a good network of people. I live in very interesting places in the US where you can find areas, spots in the US where there is a lot of money, right? Really a lot of money. Think about Monte Carlo in Europe or Singapore, or some of the Singapore places, okay, in Asia. And I was invited to a party in one of those magnificent houses. I mean, the house probably $40 million house. I mean, this type of people, right? And obviously I'm out of place on my own, but whatever. And I meet this lady from, I think it was Texas, but don't quote me on that. Was probably in 65, 70 years of age. Was actually Christmas of almost 2 years ago. Okay, and I was working. We built a private fund. We had the company already up, and with clients, right? People putting money in. And 2 years ago was basically when the bond markets in the US went down by 30, 35, 40% because the interest rates of the Fed went up, right? And this person, my best guess, she's worth like maybe $100, $200 million, if not more, right? She wasn't the owner there. I was a guest, okay, invited with me. But I call it $200 million just to get the number. Maybe it's 50, maybe it's 1 billion or two, but more or less enough. And she was terrified. I'm not joking. Was kind of terrified of being what happened to the market, right? Will I be able to sustain? How can you? I mean, like you said, like, okay, Keiran said, it's enough, right? But you can. I mean, you have probably 30 years to live, right? And maximum, you can spend a few $1 million a year and still be fine. And then I went back and I said, how are people? I mean, and then I realized it's like me. Then I asked a friend of mine, I said, how is that possible that for them, okay, they're so afraid and they're like, they can't even spend, okay, that amount of money they wanted to spend. And I said, well, because you don't understand, for her, okay, this psychological challenge maybe because she's not flying her business jet. She needs to fly, I don't know, United first class, right? And for her, okay, in her group of people or whatever, she would be like the leftover. And I realized for the first time that it was Dario, right? We live in societies, and let's say Europe, the US, and many parts of Southeast Asia that, I mean, the government will take care of you even if you are, I mean, worst case scenario, you go to some public nursing home and somebody, I mean, you're not dying on the street. And financial security is so important, but there is a lot of emotional involvement that puts a perspective not in the right place.
Makes complete sense. What one other thing I wanted to add that I find very interesting about your story for Asians, especially, I think Asia's going through this transition where a lot of people believed in corporate and that was the way to go, and now there's been a lot of layoffs, and a lot of corporate, very experienced people are thinking about their first startup. Um, and I think you made that transition very successfully and are having a great time. And I think a lot of people in Asia are right in that situation. Like they're thinking, oh, okay, should I do it? Like any last bit of advice from that angle?
Yeah, I would say they should do it. I was on a well-known podcast here in the US, like probably a couple of months ago. If you Google it, you'll find it. And they were asking my co-founder and I the question, oh, guys, I mean, startups are typically for people coming out from Stanford and doing something when they're 25, right? Why would you, right? And so why would you do it? You're old. And they didn't say you're old, but basically that's what they meant. And I said, well, what's important is being young in spirit, and the startup is the best way to remain young or become return to be young in spirit. I'm a better person now than I was 4 years ago. I see more opportunities now than 4 years ago, and I feel that I'm wasting less time 4 years ago. And I've been privileged to have 3 great employers. I mean, literally, I'm not one of those guys that says, your boss is an asshole, walk away. I mean, if I can say that, I had 3 great employers that treated extremely well, each one of them. Everybody can say that. By the way, that doesn't mean success is the journey. I remember one of the greatest things that I made me feel a little bit better, because you never know. Well, actually, I'm sure that we're going to go extremely well. But you, especially at the beginning, right? You never know. You have so many questions and doubts. That's the old person still trying to be a startup founder. Once you become a startup founder, you know, they have no options, right? You need, and even if you fail in one, there is a second one that what you learn is a baggage of information they are going to use in the future, even outside the startup, even if you go back to corporate America or in corporate Asia, whatever, right? What I would actually have recommendations to anybody, not to start startups that are very much complicated. So when I spend time, there are a number of venture capitals that until literally 2 weeks ago, one of them told us, you know, venture capitals want to see startups that build products that are well known and are just built and sold in more efficient ways, right? For our case, you're building a new category of financial products in a highly regulated industries that is fragmented by countries, region legislations. Okay, that's a little bit more. Had I known it, I don't know if I would be here talking with you. No, I mean, I'm enjoying, but that's a lot of effort and sweat.
Thank you very much, Dario, for joining us. It has been absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you both. It's been exciting, great podcast, and let me know if I can help in any way.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot,
Thank
Dario.
you.